I live in a beautiful coastal town called Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. And I started my personal chef business in 2004.
My girlfriend Lori, there's really not much she can't do. Lori is one of these people that is just extremely capable. 4 more, push. And as I've grown to know her, I'm not even surprised anymore by the hurdles that she can jump without even thinking much about it.
In 2013, I got my health and nutrition certification so I could augment my personal chef business and add to it the nutritional component to cooking.
We'll have to see when your son is leaving.
Oh my gosh.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hello. Good to see you again. I'm so happy. Happy birthday. I have a great lunch. Come on in.
Look at this amazing food. And healthy too.
So I did a coconut shrimp with a spicy mango pepper sauce, chicken salad sandwiches, some fruit because we're trying to be healthy, an arugula salad with marinated tomatoes, burrata in a balsamic drizzle, some potatoes, and some pasta salad that has corn and tomatoes, grilled zucchini. It has all sorts of good stuff in it. It's very springy. And mimosas for the birthday lunch.
Birthday girl. And cheers to the chef. Absolutely. Cheers, Lori. Always.
Thank you.
In 2005, I started having some problems swallowing. I later found out that's called dysphagia. It started sporadically, randomly. It didn't really make sense to me why I was having it. I automatically blamed myself. I wasn't chewing my food well enough. I was eating too fast. I was eating too much at once. So I just kind of blamed myself for it for years. And it took almost 2 years of having that problem until it got so bad. I could no longer swallow yogurt, applesauce. Everything was getting stuck. My name is Lori, and I have eosinophilic esophagitis, otherwise known as EoE.
EoE is an allergy and immune type of disease, and in this disease, people have an exposure to an allergen, and it starts an immune reaction in the esophagus that causes a lot of irritation. I think swallowing is something that everybody takes for granted. We do it hundreds, if not more, times a day, most of the time subconsciously, and in general, it doesn't cause any problems. And so when something that's so innate and so necessary goes wrong, it's incredibly distressing.
In 2007, the doctor sent me to a GI. The GI did an endoscopy and handed me a bag of medicine, said, "Take this, you'll start feeling better, it'll go away." I took it and then just stopped because I thought that I was done. It ran its course, it was over. The doctor never really explained to me that I had a chronic illness that is incurable.
My name is Darrien, and I have eosinophilic esophagitis. My mom has always been my biggest support system. She's been there at every doctor's office, every doctor visit, surgery, and appointment I've had. And she's always been the one to kind of help me put things into perspective, and she's always my biggest cheerleader to help me push and do the things I want to do.
I retired here after 20 years in the Air Force. I live with my son, Darrien, and my daughter, Simone. Darrien is initially quiet and reserved, but as you get to know him, he's pretty free-flowing. He's friendly, he's approachable, he likes to meet people.
I'm 21 years old, and I play 2 instruments, the flute and the saxophone. And I have a black belt in Shotokan karate. and I go to Wake Technical Community College, and I'm studying network management.
Darrien's symptoms presented shortly after I brought him home from the hospital. He began regurgitating. There was no explanation for it. I was in a constant cycle of trying to feed him more than what he was throwing up. He was always on the lower end of the growth chart. It was hard trying to feed him, and it was frustrating as a new mother. He was my first child.
In EoE, the symptoms are interesting because they actually evolve over time as patients get older. So infants may have trouble with growth or failure to thrive. They may have trouble starting to take solid foods, progressing with their different feeding consistencies. They may have vomiting or crying. As they get older into adolescence, that's where we start seeing more things like heartburn, pains in the chest, and then ultimately trouble swallowing, which medically is called dysphagia, with a sense of food going down slowly or food sticking. And then that symptom of trouble swallowing is really the hallmark symptom in adults.
Earlier, people believed that it was just he doesn't want to eat the food or he's just acting out because out of defiance, but it was really something I couldn't help, and since I was so young at the time, I couldn't really explain it in a way that would make sense to other people. Here you go, Mama.
Amen. It smells really good. Yeah.
When I was 9 years old, my mother had brought me a snack to eat at my grandmother's house. It was just some apple slices, and I had a choking episode, and at that point it was considered, oh, it's normal, he'll just cough it up and go about his day.
That was nothing unusual because Darrien always choked on his food. The unusual point was he could not swallow his own saliva. So in my medical mind, I thought maybe he has a bit of apple that's just lodged there in his esophagus.
And so after that, we had to go to the ER. We asked them what was going on. They couldn't give us an answer. And so after that, they transferred us by ambulance up to UNC Gastroenterology, and that's where they did an endoscopy where they take a camera and they look into your esophagus, and they saw that it wasn't food stuck in my throat, it was that my esophagus had literally swollen to the point where not even my own saliva could pass through. And it was that night when they diagnosed me with eosinophilic esophagitis.
At that point, I thought, well, what is this?
EoE is probably underdiagnosed for a few reasons. It may not be at the top of the mind of a provider who's doing the evaluation just because it's a rare condition. It can also be underdiagnosed because sometimes patients don't recognize the symptoms that they're having. This is particularly true, I would say, for adolescents and adults with trouble swallowing. And again, they may not realize that this is a problem that needs to get evaluated. So this top left panel, what we're seeing here is the view of the esophagus through the endoscope, where a biopsy is about to be taken. You can see typical findings of EoE here with the edema. The esophagus is very swollen, and it may take the symptoms getting worse over many years for them to actually seek out medical care. And even now, even after knowing about EoE and doing education over the last 2-3 decades in the field, the average time to diagnosis for an adult is still at least 5 to 8 years. And even in children, it can take up to 2 or 3 years. And so I think there is room to go with education and making diagnosis more patient-friendly.
Getting an official diagnosis of EoE was a big relief because we had a reason that what was going on. It wasn't just that he just can't eat food and he's just being defiant. There was an actual reason that I was having all these choking episodes all these years.
We've had a number of different publications that have guidelines for both how to diagnose and how to manage EoE. The management guidelines currently are very helpful in that the process for writing them reviewed all of the publications, all of the data related to treatment trials for EoE, and synthesized the information so providers now know all the different treatment options and what's recommended.
Some of the most early treatments we used, we took a medication that asthma patients would take from a nebulizer machine, and we would take this liquid and we would mix it with either jelly or Splenda to make like a thick paste. And the idea was that medication, I would eat it and it would coat around my swelling esophagus to hopefully alleviate some of the swelling. After trial and error a couple of years later, that didn't really work out. So we tried different variations of the same medicine, and all these medications would work for a certain amount of time, but then they wouldn't show promising results. So it was always an up and down process with them.
Dr. Dellon and I decided we would start with PPIs, proton pump inhibitors. So I did those for 8 weeks. My symptoms did not get any better. So then we moved on to a slurry of steroids, which was actually very disgusting, to be honest. You had to take these liquid steroids and mix them with a whole bunch of thickener and then swallow it. And it was gross. It was terrible. And I had to do it twice a day, and I did that for 6 months, and my symptoms did get better. So it was one of those, okay, it doesn't taste great and it's really inconvenient and I hate doing it, but my symptoms are going away. The problem with that was I had a lot of side effects. I was having restless legs at night, itching, mouth thrush, which is very horrible and I wouldn't wish on anyone. I had that 4 times, and I had to keep taking different medications to get rid of that. I had headaches. I was irritable. I just didn't feel like myself. And I decided that maybe I wouldn't do the steroids for a while and see how long I could go before my symptoms would return. So that's what we did. I stopped taking it, and within a year, I was having the trouble all over again. So then it became what to do now. Keep taking steroids, having side effects, or maybe try another course of action.
When I think about the anti-inflammatory treatments, this has 2 categories. There can be medications, or there could be diet elimination. Now, for diet elimination, we think that EoE in many people, if not the majority, is caused by food allergies. And so the idea is to remove the food allergy triggers, and that will heal the esophagus. The difficult part of this type of treatment for EoE is we don't have good allergy tests to identify what the food triggers are. As opposed to when people have immediate food allergy reactions, where either the skin prick tests or the blood tests you might get are pretty good at telling you what the food trigger is. Those are not accurate at all in EoE. But we still have good strategies, and we do what's called empiric elimination diet.
Dr. Dellon put me on my first elimination, which was dairy and gluten. That was about 8 weeks, then I had an endoscopy. Unfortunately, I did not go into remission, meaning there were still eosinophils in my esophagus. So that meant taking away more food. So we took away eggs, then we took away other ingredients. As we went along, more and more foods were taken out, but I still couldn't get into remission, and it was extremely frustrating and very expensive because every time I would eliminate a food, I would have to have an endoscopy, and that would tell us whether or not I had eosinophils in my esophagus. So between the tests and eliminating food, I was really getting frustrated, and it got to the point where I said, okay, I think we might be doing this the wrong way. Instead of taking one thing out at a time, I'm going to take almost everything out and start with just a few items and move from there. And that's what we did. And I started that in 2013. And I only ate chicken and turkey, sweet potatoes, blackberries, and spinach for 8 weeks. And I went into remission.
The elimination diet is challenging. And I think if most people think about what they've eaten today, the typical kind of foods that we eat here, in the US, most of those foods would not be allowed.
So we tried 2 elimination diets. The first was a 6 food, and it's a difficult process to try these diets because you have to really sculpt and redesign your entire diet plan to fit the criteria. And the second one was a 9-food elimination diet, which was even more difficult than the first round. I was also working at fast food, and it was very difficult to adhere to the diet plan when you're making a burger that looks and tastes very good right in front of you. So it was very challenging because you have to really deny yourself of the things that you normally eat, and you have to be more aware of what you're eating at a plate. So going out to restaurants wasn't really an option because you can't tell is there cross-contamination within the food because you had to adhere to the diet plan.
It may not be realistic at all for elimination diet to be used, even if it was effective previously in life, because that patient now may want to go out with friends. If they're going to live in a dorm and eat in a cafeteria, they can't be on an elimination diet many times. So that's a decision. Do you do a diet elimination, and what kind of diet elimination do you do? That a patient and doctor will talk about that and decide what's best for them.
I did not eat much this morning because
You knew.
Those foods I could eat and I would stay in remission. The problem was I needed to try all of the foods that I had eliminated to see if they were triggers. And that began a 10-year testing period of eliminating foods and then reintroducing one food group at a time and testing with an endoscopy to see if I was triggered. And it was grueling. The first one out of the gate, I was so excited. I thought rice, for sure. It's benign, it's just rice. How could it be bad for me? One of the worst triggers for me, so no rice. And then I tried a protein, I tried pork. I'm triggered by pork. And it just got so frustrating. I kept thinking, could it really be that I'm triggered by all of these things? But then I'd test something else like beef and I would pass and I would be all excited. Yay, I passed beef.
Well, have at it. Let me know if you need anything. I'll be here.
I was excited about passing shellfish and fish because I love shellfish and fish. I failed dairy, I failed eggs, I failed all of the grains except for corn. And as a chef, not being able to eat about 80% of what I cook, it definitely takes its toll.
I'm always very impressed by her ability to not eat the foods that she loves. And I will eat sometimes the meals that she prepares that follow her eliminations, and it's always amazing food, but then afterwards I find myself like, where's the bread? I would need some bread. And she's able to do that her entire life, and it's really impressive that she can do that.
So not having a lot of food that you love to eat, it might sound like it's not that big of a deal, but people forget the social impact. Going to a birthday party but not being able to have the cake. Going to a wedding and someone keeps saying, just have a bite of cake, just have a bite of cake, and you can't have a bite of cake. And just missing holiday things and special stuff, dinners, things that people just want to have you come over and have, and then you're off eating your plain lettuce because that's all you can have. Sometimes it just would get to me. I went through a really hard period about 5 years ago. I was depressed. I was angry, I was resentful. I was completely isolated. I didn't talk to people about it. I'd get teased by people, family members, friends. They think it's funny. Or they'll roll their eyes about, oh yeah, you've got that food thing. Some people don't believe that it's an actual disease. They just think I want to be skinny or I'm a picky eater. I'm a chef, I'm not a picky eater. I'm pretty hopeful that my EoE will stay under control. Now that I've gone through all of the foods and all of the testing and I know what all of my triggers are, I can pretty much control it now, which is something 10 years ago I just didn't think would ever happen. And that's all because I have an amazing doctor who's gone through all of this with me. He's helped me every step of the way.
Lori has been incredibly committed in her journey for her treatment for EoE. She is someone who has taken the dietary approach primarily. And as with her background as a chef, is potentially the ideal person to go down that route. But what she's done and has been able to do with finding her triggers, understanding ways to make sure she's getting good nutrition, is really incredible.
My life today with EoE is very well managed, thanks to the strong support staff and the doctors and teams I have and the medications I'm taking. It's easier to live a normal life now because I'm not having the symptoms I used to have when I was a kid. And so overall, things are just a lot better than what they used to be.
Today, his EoE is stable. Because of the medication that he's taking right now that's traditionally used for asthma, it seems to be keeping the eosinophilic cells down. Now, the dilations that are done are actually holding because those EoE cells are not there. They're not present to cause the inflammation in the esophagus. So he's actually in what I would call a remission state right now.
Darrien is someone who also has a number of other allergic diseases, including severe asthma. And in his case, he's been fortunate in that his asthma therapy is actually a therapy that does double duty, treating EoE. The future of EoE right now is very, very hopeful. Really, this is in part because people who do the basic research and what we call translational research, taking lab findings and applying them to people, have been able to learn so much about the causes of EoE and all the allergic inflammatory pathways.
If I could tell non-EoE patients, if I could give you a message, it would be think about the EoE patient that you know. Try to put yourself in their shoes with what they're going through, whether it's a lot of procedures or a lot of pain, a lot of fear, a lot of unknown. Try to understand that they're going through something that most people don't go through.
The thing that impresses me most about her is her desire to advocate for others who struggle with the similar issues that she has. And I know she's somebody that would dedicate her life to helping other people, and to me that is extremely beautiful.
And for EoE patients, I would say my message is don't give up. Figure out a way to support yourself and really take care of yourself.
Even though it can be very restrictive with what you're able to do, it shouldn't prevent you from doing the things that you want to do. Even though I had eosinophilic esophagitis, I was still able to learn 2 instruments, practice karate all the way to black belt, and go about my regular activities in day-to-day life.
The hope is that over the next 2 to 5 years, our treatment algorithms for EoE are going to change with a lot of new treatment options. And there's the hope that we'll be able to pair the best treatment to the patient who might respond best to that particular therapy.
It's great that nowadays me and my mom and my sister can sit down and enjoy a meal without having to worry about choking episodes anymore.
Right now I have no symptoms. I have been in remission for months because I am sticking to my elimination diet, and I feel pretty good. I also try to force myself to exercise and eat right and drink a lot of water and take care of myself because I don't want my EoE to come back. I do go back on the steroids for very short periods of time when I travel, and that has been the key for me to be able to go on vacation, and in a way I get to leave EoE behind, which is the ultimate vacation for me.